Welcome back to the Homes Podcast, episode 19. Today we have two special guests, but before we introduce them, as always, I have my favorite host next to me, David Kellogg.
It's been a long time, everybody. I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, how was vacation?
It was pretty good, but I hope you missed me.
Come on, of course
Yeah,
I
yeah.
did.
Yeah.
Looks like you burned a little bit.
Oh my God!
So you don't tan?
I have layers of peeling on the back, but that's mostly done now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
No, glad to be back. Glad for the energy in the room, guys. Do you want to take a moment and introduce yourselves and
Yeah.
why you've been invited here today, and then we'll get into a conversation.
Actually, before we even say that, they're part of the Community Change Council. So we have today William Rivas and Eric Johnson.
Yep.
Yes. Welcome.
No, thank you for having us. It's
Yes.
a great opportunity. The work that's been done is amazing. So I'm excited to be here to talk to you guys about it.
Perfect.
Yeah, we're just thrilled to have this community group come together and from a diverse set of backgrounds to solve a problem. Right now we're focusing on housing and housing Schenectady, but we're open to doing other challenges in the future with the Community Change Council.
Yeah.
Glad to be here.
Thank you. Well, I did some research on you both, and I know William is actually a project director of Bridges in New York. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I'm the program director of Bridges of New York,
Okay.
which was formerly the Altamont program. I've been there for going on 15 years. It was a homeless shelter and parole rehabilitation program.
Mm-hmm.
And currently, I'm still the program director there. It's Bridges of New York, and we have the only parole reentry housing contract in the Capital District, and we're looking to actually open another site next month.
Wow. What does that mean to the average person who doesn't know what you just said?
Anyone who is coming home from incarceration, male or female, we have a 25-bed contract that we can house them for up to 120 days. And housing is totally free, intensive case management. We offer access to host of services, substance abuse, mental health treatment, housing, employment opportunities. And so that's just one of the hats that I wear. I'm also the executive director of Cocoa House.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. And Eric, yourself?
Well, that's
Yeah.
admirable stuff.
How do
I
you
mean,
top that?
It's been great to meet Will over this
Yeah.
project. But so I grew up in Schenectady. I moved to Colorado for 30 years and recently moved back 2 years ago. I'm a project manager for a living in the electric utility space, but my passion, besides working on the Community Change Council, is the Electric City Community Grocery Store. So we're opening up a full-service grocery store in downtown Schenectady. We're in lease negotiations now for a site on Lower State Street. We've got 1,500 plus members, and it's just a really exciting project to collaborate with the community. But this Change Council is some good stuff too. So
Yeah.
glad to be here today.
And you guys are two great people doing some amazing stuff. I don't know how we top that. We're just realtors.
I don't really compete. No,
We don't.
No. Like, yeah, I try to put. So I work. I guess if I was going to put a feather in the hat, I work with a lot of people that have been told no, that they can't get a home, and we do a lot of coaching. I do a lot of coaching. My lenders do a lot of coaching. We get a lot of yeses where other people have been no'd to death, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But it takes a lot of effort.
Yeah.
A lot of time, and it would be way easier to sell $3 million houses 3 times a year. That'd be my whole year.
Oh, absolutely.
But, I chase stuff at like 60 and 70,000.
Yeah. Garbage,
So-
you say, right?
Well, it would be
Opportunity
it would be
is what I said.
full gut rehab
Yeah.
at $70K in Schenectady, where in Gloversville $90K gets you a house where you have tenants for 15 years.
Yeah, exactly.
So it depends on if we can adjust location. But what we're talking about, I think today, is going to be a lot of the housing specific to Schenectady. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yep, that's right.
So I want you to tell me. Let's start at the bottom. Hey, let's start at the top. Rather. Hey, what's the issue? Like, what are your key things to focus, and where are we going to focus on those issues when it relates to housing?
So before we get in that, just backing up just a minute, this group came together, a diverse group of community members looking to make change in the community. And we committed to doing a 90 days of action. This was through the leadership of the Schenectady Foundation and the consultant they hired. We came together and as a group decided that this was a challenge that was worth doing in 90 days. So quick hit, quick successes, that's where we kind of started from. So it was a voting, we're democratically organized, and all came together in our first, what was it, 4 day meeting, I think it
Yeah.
was. We came up with brainstormed ideas and determined that this was the project that we wanted to work on first.
Okay. Is this your first project then with the Change Council?
Yep.
Yeah, it is. When we originally came together, we're working with the group Community Science, which is kind of global. They were brought in by the Schenectady Foundation, and again, it was a host of organizations, and we met at the Electric City Barn.
Cool.
And they gave us the opportunity to really just brainstorm. They had pads of paper all over the walls, and and the thing was just write down what's an issue, what's a project, and then kind of working with the housing thing intensely over the last 15 years. It was just something for me that felt like it was something that was tangible for us to do really in 90 days, because that was the big piece, which I appreciated with the council was, it's great to have lofty goals, but what is something, a tangible win, something we can really do that we believe we can come together to execute in 90 days? And this is what, the group kind of decided on.
I really want to get into that because I can't flip a house or build a house or in some cases buy a house in 90 days based on title or condition or inspections or whatever. So I really want to know how that goal has been progressing in 90 days, because that is, in my mind, such a short period of time, which is cool by itself. I like the, I get a lot of project fatigue. If something takes more than 6-7 months, I don't want to see the same walls. I don't want to see the same pieces of a job not finished. So tell me, either one of you or together, what progress has been made in 90 days or so far, because we're not 90 days in, are we?
Yeah, no, we're past
we're
90
past
days.
90
Yeah, we're like 120 days.
Okay, yeah, so
wow.
cool. Well, do you want to start at the top, or do you want to go right into...
I would say that, so one of the things about this inaugural project is you're going to have adjustment, right? So failing, we decided we're not going to be afraid to fail. I wouldn't say that we failed, but we did adjust as a group, right? We had this idea that we were going to initially advocate towards the renter aspect of things. And then really with the concept of one Schenectady that the Schenectady Foundation believes in and really uniting all residents together, we decided that we ought to adjust and represent landlords and tenants and really understand what the needs are. So we reoriented ourselves towards that. We released a community survey. We've got, I think, 250 responses so far. Those are mostly tenants, but lots of landlords, and really understanding what's important to them. And then we've worked out by expanding our network and figuring out what community assets we have, we were able to understand a project that was going on in Albany that was called the Albany Landlord app. So we decided that we were going to focus on building an app that would allow consumers to see the history of the property based on public data. And that's where we're at right now. But, Will, I'm sure you could add more to that.
Yeah, I think the thing that most people don't understand when you talk about collaboration is, and we were talking about this earlier, was most people don't understand what it takes to collaborate. And I think we spent a lot of time figuring that out in the beginning. Like we had guidance protocols, no one voice dominates the conversation, be mindful, be respectful of other people's ideas. So for us to be a part of this coalition, we all agreed and signed off on all these agreements. So for a person like myself, who in many rooms is, has a dominant voice or ideology, it was a different task for me to sit and allow other voices to really develop. But we had committed to this process. So I think maybe the first 45 to 60 days was all of us learning how to communicate together, work through strategies and ideas through different measures of uncomfortability. Because again, we watched some other voices really step up and become leadership capacity in this process, and it was good to really support it. So I think towards the end, we started to realize that, okay, in the midst of all this planning and organizing, I think one of the things we laughed at was like, oh, wait a second, maybe there's something else we could have done, like a community conversation with the community. We had gone to different community events and passed down information, but we had been so committed to creating the logistics that there were a couple tangible steps we may have missed. But the great thing is when we got to the 90-day mark, we were able to look back and say, hey, we've made some great progress because we've spoken to renters and tenants. We spoke to the organization in Albany. We've gone to city council. So there was a lot of steps that were taken to get the work accomplished. But we also realized that we did so much planning. There were a couple of things we probably could have just did.
Yeah. I was just agree with Will. Like, it's a diverse community of activists, right? We're trying to jumpstart community engagement here in Schenectady. And so getting to know and work with each other and get each other, you know, how people show up. Some members of our Community Change Council were, you know, lacking housing. Some were, physically impaired. A lot of our members, the women members, unfortunately, are all in the teaching profession, so they couldn't be here in the middle of the day. But it was a great group of people to get to know, and really, like, I didn't know Will from anything, and I really enjoy working with him. It took a hot second to figure that out, but it's kind of that civic engagement, getting it kickstarted.
That's amazing. I mean, you guys are bridging the gap between what renters needs, what landlords needs, but also having conversation between everyone in the council in regards to what's the bigger picture here and how do we move forward. So I feel like the world needs that as a whole. But that's awesome that you guys are doing that in Schenectady here.
What were some of the largest or most common themes? I want to split, I know collaboration, but I want to split it up into the two sides that I clearly see here. What were some of the major recurring themes for tenants saying, this is what I want to see in housing. These are my main issues. I don't want to drive where I'm going for. I want to hear it from you, blank slate, either one, both, whatever. What were the common themes as tenant-related issues, complaints, or concerns?
Yeah, I think for the tenants, a lot of which, you know, I work with Bridges, it was just access to information, not knowing who the landlords are unless something is happening. You know, you see a landlord when you sign up the paperwork. Then if something goes wrong, you kind of see him again. The other thing was just the location of housing. Again, Schenectady has different areas where crime is, which are not really controlled by the landlord. But we have certain areas which are a little bit tougher than others. And it's getting access to moving in other neighborhoods, you know. And the great thing about the council is we had representatives from all different neighborhoods. So part of what we wanted to mainly do was have the discussions, because we wanted to know in different neighborhoods what were the housing situations and issues for tenants, and how do we create change in other neighborhoods. So, you know, the tenants, a lot of it is not being able to ask questions or feeling like they can't advocate for themselves. But the good thing about that is, like, in meeting with the landlords, a lot of them have a similar feeling where they're like, you know, we don't know the tenants except for them coming to fill out. So creating this situation where we can see that information, it's creating a bridge where the landlords and tenants can have better relationships later on down the road.
Why do you think tenants and landlords don't have that information or that relationship right off the bat?
It's transactional. I think since the pandemic, rent has gone up in the city of Schenectady in different neighborhoods.
Dramatically.
Yeah.
And that is, you know, while the rent has gone up, the increase in pay hasn't gone up. So for the landlords who are investing, and this is why we had to have these conversations, which I love that the council did. For the landlords, they're investing their time, they're investing their money in rehabbing these homes and purchasing and making sure they're up to par. So their cost is what there is, because they have a business to run and they have families to take care of as well. But then for the tenants, you're like, okay, well, the rent was this and now it's this. Yeah. And how do I go get the extras? And the thing is, with social services and with the resources, there's a lot of tie-ins that go into it. There's a poverty limit. You can only make so much amount of money. If you make anything over a certain amount of money, you can't receive assistance. It's the allocation of funds that when they're available, where do you get the funds from? Do you go to SCAP? Do you go Bethesda House? Like, there's all these little caveats. And for the landlords, they don't know all this stuff. And for the renters, they don't always know everything that the landlords have to experience as well. So I'm sorry, I get passionate about
it.
Yeah, no,
I appreciate that. No, you're right. Because I actually just purchased a building yesterday. So
for you?
Yeah, I did.
Who'd you use as your real estate agent?
What?
Who'd you use as your
Myself.
real estate agent? Oh, no.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It was a multifamily?
It was a two-family, yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, it was cool.
For you. I'm
Thank
excited for you.
I appreciate it. Thank you. But in regards to being as you said, Will, being a renter for so many years, you're right. It is transactional when it comes to you just pay the rent each month, and you don't really have questions. And if anything comes wrong, you just contact the landlord. But you're right; they don't have much resources to go off of when it comes to wanting to find more information about certain things,
Right.
or care sometimes.
If you don't know how to ask a question, what happens is you become naturally frustrated,
Yep.
and you become frustrated at the person you believe is the issue, when a lot of times they might not be. The issue doesn't have to be the landlord. It could be the fact that you can't find an answer to a question, and you think they're the ones who are supposed to be responsible for the answer, but they might not know it either.
Exactly.
So I want to jump into this relationship. If both sides of this transaction relationship, one's paying and the other one's maintaining the property, I don't know who provides my electricity. I don't know Jim John, the nuclear reactor tender. I don't need to care for to meet him. I don't need him as a friend. I just need my power, and I'll pay for it. So, based on what I'm hearing, the tenants are hoping for a more friendly relationship between tenant and landlord. If we boil that down, is that right?
Not necessarily friendly, but more accessible. I think a lot of times that becomes the thing. It's like we did the community conversations with police for 3 years during the pandemic. It wasn't that the community wanted to be friends with the police. They just wanted to be able to have access. Because the thing is even if there's a difference of agreement, right, a difference of opinion, having access to have that difference of opinion is key. But if you just have a difference of opinion and you don't have a relationship with the person, you can't have a dialogue.
So, if I had 100 units, I would have a property manager, right? And if that property manager had office hours, and they had the ability to call that property manager, and that number was known, and the response time was generally quick and easy to work with, would that satisfy all the needs that you're bringing up?
I think it would satisfy some of them,
Okay.
maybe not all of them, because it depends on who you hire as a.
Sure. And
People skills is a big thing here.
absolutely. No, I don't disagree.
People skills
Yeah.
is a big piece of this.
I don't disagree. I think my biggest problem I have as landlords are people who only fix what's broken and don't fix what's worn out. And that's a very big difference.
Yes.
And to go into a building that's been neglected for 30 years and to put everything brand new is extremely expensive.
Yes.
Right? And my rent when I'm done will reflect that when the property's done. And I'm gonna upset people. You know, they're gonna say, "Well, show me the receipts," and I can show you $255,000 worth of receipts, which is a big number.
Yes.
Right. But I try to offer everything, and the only reason my rents at Lang Street will be so high is I didn't skip a single step. And if I had to sell, which heaven to Betsy never happens.
Knock on wood.
It's not so much greater than some of the mediocre stuff that's on market today.
Yeah.
Like, there's a couple you walk through that are in the 300s, and you think maybe the 3 should have been at 2. You know, but you know, there's a lot of steps that are skipped with certain people. So, you know, but if I put someone in that apartment, I don't need to know what their favorite topping on pizza is. I just need to make sure that they're enjoying responsibly my $250,000 or $350,000 investment. So, but what I was expecting you to say was property maintenance was an issue. Because in my mind, lack of maintenance causes, for a landlord, it's a maintenance issue. For a tenant, it's a quality of life issue.
Correct.
And I really thought the piece was going to say, hey, if you don't have someone local, you should have someone local. Right.
It's on our list.
Yeah.
We didn't get to all the bullet
Okay.
points.
That's
but
the next 90 days.
It's definitely on the list.
Yeah.
And I think part of the thing with the council of why we didn't just address that specifically was it's going to be hard to build relationships over time if the people that you're trying to build a relationship with feel like you're attacking them. So
I can understand that too, but I think the best way to prevent an attack is, and this is where, to get exactly back to your point, open communication early.
Yes.
Yeah, it's much easier to adjust a slight change of course in a car than try to whip that wheel when you're already in the ditch.
Yeah, but it also helps when you have landlords or renters like yourself who are saying, you know, specifically, the reason why the rent is being raised here is because look at the quality of work and the investment that I've taken.
Yeah.
That brings about a very different feeling than you just moving into a place and the landlord walks in and says, hey, your rent's going up $400 this month. And you're like,
well, there are protections
Yeah,
against that
exactly.
in a lot of places.
And there's also loopholes to those protections as well, right? Transactions of the piece of real estate and things of that nature. But
Yeah.
I think the number one result of our survey of tenants was that they want a responsive landlord.
I understand. You don't want to be
Right.
talking to the wall and hope that one day
and-
you hear an echo.
And so, like earlier, we were talking about it being a transactional relationship, and I believe that there are people that are part of the Change Council that see this as the need to break it down from being a transactional relationship, right? Landlords can learn to be better landlords. Tenants can learn to be better tenants. If a tenant is a responsible tenant and lets the landlord know of things, then it's good for the property. And a lot of tenants don't have that education. So part of our goal with the host application is to, one, provide information that's publicly available about individual properties, but also provide resources to landlords and to tenants so they can up their game and improve that partnership. Because at the end of the day, where you live is a pretty important thing, right?
Absolutely.
And if you feel like your landlord is responsible and responsive to whatever it is, like, oh, the sink is slow to deliver water, can you come fix that? A bunch of bachelors living in a place might just live with that. A couple might really ask, proactively ask that, because the bachelor pad is not used to asking landlords. And I had this situation just last week where a young woman that took over the apartment, she moved in with her boyfriend. She's like, the kitchen sink's running slow. Can you take a look at it? And I went and looked at it. It was clogged with old, scaling from the old pipes.
was
And
that in the aerator? You just
no.
pulled the aerator off
I
and-
replaced the whole unit, and
Yeah.
it was like a champ.
Yeah.
So, and they were so happy,
Yeah,
right?
cool.
And it cost me it cost money, and
Yeah.
it took some work, but the result is you've got a tenant relationship that is strong, right? They can reach out to you, and I think that that's a big challenge going forward. Is how do we create a culture where it's not us versus them, landlords versus tenants. Tenants are just like providing cash to the landlords to pay off their mortgage, but really create a condition of healthy housing for the for all people.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, and where you're going with that, I really appreciate. So one of my goals is I don't compete on price when I purchase property, because my competitive edge is come look at it when it's done. And if you had to pick 3 different finish levels in your properties, and mine's always the same, mine's always a full gut rehab on things I'm going to keep, on multifamilies I keep. It could be different on a flip. If I'm going to keep it, there's nothing skipped. Right, so I may not be competitive on a neighboring property, but if you knew that my finish level was clean, safe, good, everything anyone would hope for, plus a higher tax bill for the city, then I want the city to say, hey, Dave, can you put some more offers in this week? We'd love to see more of your level hit the market. And it's super interesting to see how much plastic goes in new homes. I mean, vinyl windows are one thing, but when everything you touch is vinyl plank or plastic basin sinks instead of the old stainless steel, and no butcher block or anything like that, but plastic covered wood. I mean, you can touch nothing but plastic in a house, and something about that to me just seems wrong on some level.
And I think I think stuff like that really takes a piece into where we're at is the quality. When someone goes into, like I said, I work with people from the homeless population, and whether it's substance abuse, mental health, whatever, people want a quality of living. And a lot of times, depending on where you live and where you go, reflects how you feel about yourself. So if you have a landlord, again, like when you're talking about the plastic stuff, like I'm literally picturing somebody walking into a home and literally the quality of everything being like, okay,
It shades of gray and everything plastic.
Yeah, and it's like,
it's killing me.
How do you feel about that?
Yeah.
How does that make you feel about yourself or your situation? Are you a person who thinks that you can move up in life? Are you a person that thinks you can raise your kids a certain way? And I think this is why these dialogues are so important, because I don't think the landlords take stuff like this into consideration because they don't have to. This is more tenant-based stuff. Now, again, for the tenant, you have to make sure you maintain, you pay your bills on time, you keep things clean, that you're responsible and things like that. And again, all of that is part of the culture that we're building and working on in the community. But it takes some time.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Take some time.
How long have you guys been established? Has it just come about this year, or?
Yeah, it was. I think 125 days ago we
Yeah.
came together. So
Everything's
Not
within
to put an exact number of
Yeah,
tries.
exactly.
we're having a party on the
Oh, wow.
24th of
They're having a
September
party,
to
yeah.
celebrate.
Oh, cool.
So it's been,
There you go.
Which would be
And-
day 175.
Yeah.
But I do want to just touch on the publicly available information, right? So
Yeah.
primarily we're going to the city. Some of the data is stored by the sheriff's department, so eviction information. And we've been partnering with Mayor McCarthy and his staff to get the data from all the different components, right? Zoning, permits, law enforcement, fire, and then from the county for evictions. It takes something, right? That's collaboration. It's kind of the first request that I'm aware of sort of the smart city where they store the information, but still some of it's a little bit bifurcated. So they're bringing it together and allowing us, giving us a data feed for us to provide this information. And we could foil it or whatever, but they've been real collaborative to
That's excellent.
provide us a feed we're getting on Friday, which we're really excited. We're going to plug into the app, have some conversations about the rubric, about how we do score a property based on the data that we get, and then see how we can get that updated over time.
So when you score properties, how does a previous tenant's eviction measure against a property? Because if I own the property, I'm not in charge of them paying on time or not. So how does that eviction work?
So all the eviction says is that the landlord has gone through the work to perform an eviction, right? So it's just a piece of data that is available to the tenant. Because it does take work, right, to do an eviction.
Sure.
That's a process.
Yeah.
And so if you have a property that never has any evictions, I think that tells you one of two things. Either the tenants are happy and they're well served in the place, or that the landlord doesn't really follow through with these sorts of activities.
That's interesting because that information can be interpreted then supremely well or supremely badly. I mean that's kind of a cool wild card to throw in there. I know as a landlord, as you will, that you cannot measure previous tenant history like previous evictions when you go to make your choice on who to pick as your tenant. So there is Ryan. I'm going to do a shout out. Ryan Vino of Vino Property Management. Threw one in there for you, buddy. He has something that the tenants can pay for, and what it is it records. He's a property manager, and one of the things he has is it records to your credit score on time, but also late payments. So if you've been a great tenant for 10 years and you're ready to buy a house, you have 10 years of on-time payments. What an incredible tool to empower you to move forward. Yeah. And if you watch our early episodes or any of them, I mean, we talk about a lot of opening gates of entry, like you guys are talking about affordability on rental. We talk about affordability on purchases. There's grants out there. There's programs. There's education pieces, which I know you guys are doing one soon. I want to get into that and give you that throwback to you. But what a great way to hold both parties accountable.
Yeah, that was a big theme that we talked about throughout this process was transparency and accountability. Really on both parts. If we're looking to build better housing relationships moving forward, then we have to be honest about the most uncomfortable conversations and find ways to work through them. Because I feel like whether it's renting or owning at some point in time, the only way we get to a place of better housing is we got to do difficult work. And it's easier if we just get in now, and having all these organizations at the table has really made it easier because we all have access to different levels of the community. For our teachers, they're in the schools, they're talking to the kids, they're talking to the parents. The messages can get back. I'm dealing with the reentry. Elise is from SCAP. She's dealing with the homeless population and individuals looking for first month's rent and assistance to go into apartments, and plus she has landlords. So we really have all these people with all this different access where this message of transparency and accountability really starts to trickle into.
Cool. Also, we've engaged with SCAP, which is a landlords association in Schenectady. They're early informing. They developed during the pandemic in order to have some solidarity in how to handle, I guess it would be people that were not paying rent, right? So they wanted a unified front on how to do that. Their organization that we came to sit with heard their thoughts. And at the very beginning, it was sort of an adversarial thing, but we were able to have a conversation with them about how together we can do better. Right. And so right now I think there's a lot of opportunity for them to become more organized, work with the landlords. Like, I'm a landlord, but I'm not a member of it. Why should I join? What's in it for me? And help that group get organized to help all landlords sort of get educated and resources so that they can do better in their business.
Yep. I think being a landlord is all like having a job where you can go in and really excel and be proud of the work you do. You hand your paper in at the end of the day to the boss. You're like, there's no errors, boss. I checked it 3 times. You can do the same with housing. Then other people just clock in and just ride out the clock, and they're waiting at the water cooler as long as possible. They're waiting to punch out 5 minutes. Or they see it as just a way to make money, and I guess there's no inherent responsibility for what not shareholders but stakeholders, people who have a stake in the quality of housing, neighbors or the tenants or the city. There's just no interconnective feeling there.
Yeah.
No. So I mean, in summary, you guys came together to expand on affordable housing with this app that provides more information on specific, what happens with the house, tenants, all that. And to bridge the gap between tenants and landlords and make it a better conversation instead of transactional. Is that correct? Was that done in the first 90 days?
Yeah, I mean, yes, we did set off to do that, and not necessarily affordable housing, but just encouraging right relationships between landlords and tenants. And yeah, I mean, and we make mistakes, right? So we were talking about the rubric. It'd be great to have you on the council. Like, we might not get it right at the first time. There's different ways you can turn the levers of this data that would be more meaningful to the community. So it's not like we're going off the rubric that Albany used, but we need to take a look at it and see how it's applicable for Schenectady. So that scaling of a score for a property is something that we really need to finesse over time.
Yeah.
When you talk to an investor, and you've seen the property before, do you rate the quality of house? Do you be like, hey, I got a B+ house, we could use some updating down the road, but it's good enough today? Do you ever put a letter grade to a house?
Not letter grade, but
How would you describe something straight out of an HGTV catalog? Would you say, hey, I got an A+? They're asking a ton of money on rent.
Meticulous, beautiful home.
But I'm going to tell you, it's worth it. Right?
Yeah, just
you
about.
Ever use that?
Yeah, of course.
So I have given like 3 renovations that I've seen like an A+, and one is done. It's listed. It's a single family in Niskuna, and it's one of the nicest homes I've ever actually been into. It's not a rental, but I'm picky with renovations, and they were just about perfect too. And I told like 6 people to go online and look it on Zillow or my website. No big deal. And so to get back to you now, Eric, I give a letter grade on a renovation or a maintenance. Hey, it's a B+, but you can feel the sagging in the floor. Someone needs to get in there and jack the main beam before you start to have issues with the doors not closing. Right? But the finish level is great. So does this app track periodically, like, hey, it was an A+ 24 years ago.
Yeah.
The last 2 people had dogs in there. The poop's still on the carpet, so now it's a D.
Yeah.
Like, is there like?
So yeah, the Albany app that we're modeling after does grade, just to be very clear. And everybody that we talked to within the landlord community felt like, I never liked when I got grades. I always got in trouble with mom and dad or whatever it was, right? So like grading was, the initial response was like, don't do grading, but we have to do something, right? We have to measure it in some way. So initially there was we kind of shied away from grading. It's all publicly available data. So over time and getting recurring data, you would see an improvement or a decline of the grade based on the rubric. And that's what we're looking for, right? And if there's trends that we can analyze and share, that's great. Right now we're just waiting to see our first flash of the data.
What would be a really interesting thing if it's not there? I think how long a tenant stays. shows great
So there is
trust in the system.
There is one data point that helps with that. For more than two family homes, so if it's a single family home, you're a tenant, or two family home and you're a tenant, and then you rent the other one, there's no record, is what I understand, with the city. But if you have a house that you're not living in and renting out, you're supposed to register with the city.
Sure.
And then every time you flip, you have to pay for an inspection. So there is a data point on that.
Yes, you're talking the ROPs or rental certificates, and there is no requirement of a rental certificate on a two-family that's owner-occupied.
That's right.
And then once you go, the city, 4 units, I believe, considers a 4-unit commercial, and that's when you go ROPs.
Yeah. And I talked about bifurcated data. There's part of the data which is how many units you're approved for.
Yep.
That's often from what I understand, at least right now, it's like often a side spreadsheet. So it's not tracked within the property itself always. And there's some misalignment there.
That sounds like they would hide in a zoning book somewhere.
So, in the back of under a truck seat or something.
Yeah, so I just had a deep dive on rental certificates. That's why I know about that.
Yeah.
They don't transfer. So someone's like, hey, give me the rental certificates. I'm like, owner-occupied two-family don't exist. And if they did, they don't transfer. What do you want? Something that doesn't exist or something that won't transfer? What are you digging for?
At that point, you got to do them again, right?
No. Well,
That's every 2
so
years?
If the person that it was a cancellation, unfortunately,
Oh.
was an owner occupied, which means they also would need a rental certificate. So there's one doesn't exist, you don't need it, and you won't need it when you move in. So there are the loophole you're talking about, but I don't know why they'd not want a rental certificate, but that's not up to me.
Well, the city's been engaged, so if there's something that's the outcome of this that would encourage a policy change, I'm sure they'd be up for it. Like they're aligned with this. They want to see people be in right relationship in their living spaces for sure.
Yeah. I want to ask so to jump off this housing piece for 1 second, what were some of the runner-up options that you guys were considering running as your first inaugural project? Was it lead, or was it affordability? Was it food locality? Was it?
It was a lot of different ideas, and it wasn't just housing. There was stuff about food. There were projects around assisting community organizations with development. There were some beautification projects. Like, I think there were probably like 50 different ideas scattered around the Electric City Barn.
Cool.
And as we really started to taper them down, what we started to look at was time frame and tangibility. Like, if we have a rehab project on a house, it might take 3 months to do this. We got to raise the money, demo. It's not within our 90-day time frame. So we move on to another idea. Yep. And so, like, there were all these absolutely phenomenal ideas, but given the time frame that we signed up to work together, this is kind of
cool.
what worked. I think the other one was that we were really looking at was
there was the housing co-op one. Remember that one?
Yep, the housing co-op.
So, like, getting a housing co-op where you could have people, several houses owned, right, and people living in those.
Yeah.
Shared ownership under a business, and then people could buy in or buy out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so like renting and owning a single family home doesn't have to be the only options, right? Creating an alternative option for home ownership.
So I guess better question, what's being done in the next 90 days?
Yeah, we need to talk about that. I mean, obviously, rolling out this app is imperative, and we've got support from the Schenectady Foundation for the technical aspects of that. I personally, I'd love to see planning for a citywide cleanup in the spring before
like
all
that.
the grass has started. Make it fun and competitive. Goose Hill's already doing an amazing job, but just spreading that out through all the city and getting it excited. But we haven't really talked about what the next thing is, and we've asked for more community participation. We were picking up people along the way, which is really neat. And so people can be either continue with this project or we can do other things
I
too.
think that's the big thing I want to do is let's give a shout out to the Schenectady Foundation, Robert Carreau and his team, to Jasmine and the team at Community Science, because it is difficult to get this many people and organizations together on one accord for anything. Collaboration it's not easy. And, for the Schenectady Foundation to be willing to allow us to come together and drive this project, as much of a nuance as it was, because there were a lot of meetings like where we didn't just agree on anything, and it was like, all right, so we'll see y'all next week. Like,
We do that a lot right before family dinner. What are we having for family dinner? And no one wants the same thing. So the PB&Js come out. Yeah.
Well, this is a meeting where two people spoke. We'll see you next week.
Yeah.
And, and again, the great thing is every time we met, it gave you more of a challenge to go back and look at the information, stay in alignment with the overall goal of One Schenectady, host and lease, and these different things that we came up with, and kind of remove your own personal interest. Like, okay, well, I mean, for me, I was vacationing and I'm working on all this other stuff. So I was intentional about, I got to take a step back, and I'm going to support and be in much of a supporting role as I can for this project, but I can't take on any leadership capacity. And it was great to see my suggestion be taken into the way that the council did, and just step back and be supportive and watch other people, so I think for the next 90 days, I mean, we'll cure world hunger. I don't know.
That's a lofty goal, 90 days.
It actually was Will who came. This was his sort of brainchild, and it caught great momentum. And it was actually cool to meet you and then see.
I'm a good salesman. That's all.
What I thought was neat was you kind of like are used to being at the front of leadership roles, and you consciously chose to, like, you participated, but you weren't like at the front all the so like when we went to council, Will wasn't there or wasn't speaking. I wasn't there. I wasn't speaking. We had other council members there. So it was good, and I would say that if it's possible to link a few things in this podcast, one is the community survey, and then two would be the presentation of our data of our survey to date, so we can share that. It's very helpful to anybody that's either a renter or a landlord.
So where would someone go to look at that data? Is there a website? Is there a Facebook page? Where would someone go to dive into it?
I think you might be able to access it on Schenectady Foundation's website. I think they have a link to the Community Change Council.
Yep, that's right. And that's a great question. Like, where's this stuff going to live? Who's going to maintain this thing? Who does it rightly sit with, right? Because this foundation is a catalyst, but it's not like the long-term owner of this project.
Sure.
So that's work to figure out.
It would be a nice thing to do follow-up and say, hey, this is the rollout as the app is coming out. This is version 1, what we expect to see in version 2. So if we want to have you back in a couple months as things more solidified, would you guys be willing to do that and talk about how things had been going and your expectations on the app and where community engagement on app download, whatever.
You can be our beta tester.
Absolutely.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah, let's do it in 180 days.
Yes.
180 days.
All right.
Let's start the clock now.
180 days would be cool for now. Yeah. So if I was there, I'm just going to throw this out there because I like talking about a couple of things. I would have said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we could make Schenectady less car dependent, which means removal of food deserts, which means smaller and local businesses, maybe make the monthly trip to Walmart less of a priority because you can get several things locally. Shoe repair instead of shoe replacement, things like that.
Yeah.
And I would throw this in, and we could do all that stuff with trolleys.
I'm good. I like the idea of trolleys.
Yeah.
And if we could maybe remove some food waste and mow our lawns, if we had some chickens around here.
Just know every episode he's mentioned that. Chickens and trolleys.
And trolleys. And you're allowed to take the chickens on the trolley. Absolutely.
Can we do it in 90 days?
Yes,
Ooh, that's a good question. That's a good question.
We could introduce whatever the legislation to allow up to 6 chickens, no roosters in a yard. We could do that within 90 days.
Eric's on board.
I like it.
Will's on board.
We cannot get trolleys built in 90 days. All we got to do is pull up a little black dot. It's right there. It's right there. And then you said jokingly, I think, that you could solve world hunger in 90 days. But what if we said, hey, from now on, we have to plant trees and shrubs that are with public money that provides an option for public food?
Yes.
And now we're going to go cherry trees, and instead of shrubs or roses, why don't we go blueberry bushes?
So the great thing about that is, so with Cocoa House, that's something that we did when I took over Cocoa House, is if you go around Cocoa House now, you'll see there's cherry trees, there's an apple tree. We put fresh fruit trees that we grew 2 years ago.
Nice.
And so we believe, and I guess really a lot of coalition, like this is what's so great about us all collaborating in different neighborhoods is, like, these are all the things we want to do. We
Yeah.
want to beautify all these neighborhoods. We want to make housing accessible for everyone. And no, I think there should be more fruit trees. I think chickens and trolleys is a great idea. I think like,
Sold. Right there.
I think the great thing about the city of Schenectady is, there are so many creative people and individuals. Like, we don't have to step on each other's toes to create.
Yeah.
We can create and we can share literally across all these neighborhoods. So
Yeah.
I'm with it.
I like it. I like it.
There you go.
I just have a suggestion for the transition to the trolley is the electric bike, right? So that's how I get around. I've got a cargo bike, and I can carry like 4 bags of groceries in my bike. And people are always stopping and asking me, like, where'd you get that? How'd you get that? And so maybe as a transition, we could figure out some way for the public taxes to support us all getting electric bikes and get people off their cars.
That's not a bad idea.
I would be 100% right on that. If we had, a bike rack on the trolley,
Yeah.
and
No, we'll do that.
I like that.
and it would charge because your trolley isn't going to be diesel, none of this diesel crap, right? You're going to get electric, and while you're riding the trolley, you can charge your bike for free.
You're going to have people riding the trolley to charge their phones.
I don't care.
As long as they ride the trolley.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
people around. A butts in the seat, man. It makes the daycare 10 blocks away your neighbor.
Yeah.
It makes the getting down to town hall where you can't park on a Sunday for the green market.
Yeah.
Next door, you don't need parking, right? We're putting up a swimming pool, $40 million for that swimming pool. I know it's not swimming; it's an aquatic center.
Aquatic center,
Sorry
yeah.
for down. It was a great presentation. I believe they said they didn't have a ton of parking planned.
Nice.
Because I threw, and they're like, hey, we have a great partnership with CDTA, and that's great. If you can get everyone to the bus stop and everyone on the bus, but if it's part of, hey, it's summer, we're going to double our trolley routes to the location, we can do it. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, the things that are opposite side of the city are your neighbors.
Yes.
Right? And I'm just going to keep pushing chickens and trolleys
Let's do it.
until I'm
Yeah.
kicked off. Or I can.
We
I can-
want to invite you to a council meeting, do a presentation on chickens.
Yeah,
and
there you
trolleys.
go.
Hey, it's a passion project. I don't know much about it. I don't know what goes. I don't know what's in the cookie. I just like to eat the cookie. Cool.
So where can we find you? Where can other people attend the meetings or even join?
Where do you hold your meeting? Electric City Barn, which I want to have them on someday. Mm-hmm. How?
Yeah, so what we're looking at planning to do now that we have a little bit of stuff formulated, is we're actually looking to do some community conversations. We're looking to plan a couple different locations in different neighborhoods where we actually go to the community and we talk about the work that we've done. And I think the reason why this is important is we want to hear the community's feedback to what we think a solution is. I think the fair thing to do is, and I'm quoted in saying this a lot of times, like, us as organizations, we get together and we think we have the solution for someone else's problems. That would be unfair to do to the community, for us to say we care about them and not include their voice in the project.
I care about you, so this is what I've determined I'm going to fix.
Right. So in spite of myself coming from poverty, I haven't been there a long time. It's not fair for me to think that because that was my experience 20-something years ago, that I have the solution to their problems now.
Sure.
So while we have an idea, something that we're putting together, kind of like this testing phase where now we want to have these community meetings in different neighborhoods and talk to landlords and talk to renters in real time and get their feedback. Hey, what do you guys think about this? These are some of the things that we listed that we think are important to have as data pieces. What do you guys think are important? Here's some of the data we've already located. Here where we are in the process. And really include that direct communication piece and take that feedback back. So we'll be looking to, in the near future, there'll be some announcements. Electric City Barn is one of the places we're looking at because it's central to Hamilton Hill. Mm-hmm. I think in Mount Pleasant, when we've done community conversation before, we've used the New Boys and Girls Club.
Okay.
They have a great space where families come by.
What a great place to engage the youth as well, because home ownership starts with knowing how to maintain money.
Yes.
Right, which is huge, which we've talked about a couple times.
Yeah, exactly.
I wonder if Maurice would yell at me if we didn't talk about the public library where he does the parade of homes or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah.
I forget the exact verbiage. That might be a great place to tie in too. Be like, hey, we're doing one at 6 o'clock and one at 8 o'clock. So if you're trying to get in homes to renovate, we'll talk about city properties. If you are looking for help, maintaining the ability to make payments, here's the other piece of the puzzle. Maybe we can piggyback off each other. That'd be pretty nifty.
Yeah, we'll definitely need to add that to our app, to the resources section of our website. So it's an interesting question because, like, we're just a group of citizens that are interested in being civically active. So, like, we have not bought a URL. We haven't figured out exactly where this thing is going to live. But the Schenectady Foundation is kind of our base right now for what we're doing, but knowing that eventually the app would spin itself off to the right place, right? Because there's going to be other projects that come too.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then a tab in that with a resource page.
Exactly.
Yeah. Fine.
So you have the lookup that's, we can call it a scorecard, or of how the property is, but also tons of resources for the renter and for the landlord.
Yeah.
And like you said, Eric, great civilians coming together and literally trying to make change in Schenectady. Maybe even take that and make change in different cities like Albany or, different cities within the capital region. So I appreciate you guys coming out here today, sharing this knowledge, this wealth of knowledge with us both. And I think what you guys are doing is beautiful. I mean, everyone can take a page out of your book, just having more dialogue in regards to issues that we have as a whole, where we live.
And I would just add that we are always accepting new members to the council.
Ooh.
So
Are you
you out there in the public, please reach out to the link in the website and join us. So it's not, it doesn't have to be static, right? We're changing. People can come and go and participate to make a difference. We want to make this easy for people.
Yeah.
Yeah, the community voice is just as important as the organizational voice, and so, yes, it's we're openly recruiting chickens and trolleys.
They both broke the fourth wall. They're stealing my thunder.
David,
I did it first.
Any last words?
No, this has been fun. I appreciate their passion for compassion for the community. So, yeah, no, I had fun listening to you guys talk and present where you are and where you're going. And I like seeing things in the early stages, because if we saw you in 3 years and the app was finished and you had 3 other projects finished, we wouldn't have had the grassroots kind of feel of what it felt like today. So thank you both for your time. Thank you for the intro. I felt rusty. I was a little nervous. So, no, I think this has been fun. I think that's a good natural way to finish. Any last thoughts you want to throw out into the world besides what you just did?
All good.
Rock on, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.
Beautiful.